afternoon to you, our dear esteemed viewers of the Inter-University Interface. My name is Douglas Onen, your host for today. And tonight we're discussing students' perspective on the Electoral Commission supplementary budget, but also the increase of more polling stations. This is a conversation that, of course, it has struck debate on the media and across the country. The EC is requesting up to a total of 469.5 billion Ugandan shillings as a supplementary to help them with purchase of more improved biometric machines. And of course, other equipments, as they claim, will help to improve the process of elections. So joining me to discuss this very interesting and controversial topic is a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us put perspective to the conversation and also help us unpack the topic. So in no particular order, allow me to introduce my guests, but also give them the chance to say hello, and then we dive straight into the conversation. I'll begin from my immediate right. I am joined by Miss Sharon Karungi. Very happy to have you here, a student of Kyambogo.
Thank you.
Can say hello.
Hi, viewers.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Very happy to have you here. Looking forward to having an interesting conversation with you. Right next to Sharon, we're joined by the Guild President of Medicare Professionals, Professional School, Mr. Guild President James Nkuranga.
Yes.
Very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, viewers.
Good afternoon, and very happy to have you here once again. Right next to James, we're joined by Miss Oprah Nkalubo, a student of law at Makerere University. Very happy to have you here.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Last but not least, a gentleman that has, of course, been a regular face on not only the Youth Roundtable, but also the Inter-University Interface, Mr. Adroni Rodney, who is in waiting of graduation. Very happy to have you here.
It's always a pleasure to join Civic Space. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. Let me start with you, Rodney. The conversation today looks at the Electoral Commission requesting for a supplementary budget of 469.5 billion Ugandan shillings. Of course, this comes from a backdrop that they're requesting this money. The justification is they want to buy more biometric machines. And of course, they want to move us to a more improved process of elections. But understanding this background and narrative behind the increase, the justification to have or having this supplementary budget to increase the electoral process is one that needs or begs us to scrutinize this particular process. So let us get your justification on, do you think Electoral Commission in its essence and mandate in organizing electoral processes in this country is justified to request for such an amount at this point in time when the election is just a few days from coming to pass?
You see, Drake and our dear viewers, it really saddens my heart, the thought at how our country is being grossly mismanaged. Lately, we just cannot seem to get anything right. Look at our most critical infrastructure, for example. Look at our healthcare infrastructure, how understaffed our hospitals are. Look at our roads, for example, how dilapidated they are. Look at our city. There has been an ongoing conversation about our capital, which some experts now speculate is incurably defunct and needs to be mowed down and rebuilt. Look at the attenuation of our institutions. Parliament emasculated. The Electoral Commission emasculated. The Uganda Police Force emasculated. Human Rights Commission, name it all these institutions have been weakened, and to a certain extent, they've been weaponized. Now, forgive me if I sound a little bit pessimistic and low on energy. You see, it is said that when you look on the ground for far too long, you begin to observe each and every pothole, and in doing so, you forget to look up where there might be a rainbow. But the same holds if you only look in the sky for the rainbow. You might miss out on the harsh realities. So this point of pessimism is one that should awaken us to our realities. Of course, the good things happening notwithstanding. Another aspect of our country that has been grossly mishandled is our budgeting process, which is what we are here to discuss today. The 8 trillion supplementary budget, and with our focus on the Electoral Commission budget, which requested for about 469 billion.
Which brings therefore the net estimate of the money that we are spending as a country in this financial year to 72 trillion Uganda shillings.
72 trillion. I think if you add that to the supplementary, it balloons to around 80 trillion now at the moment. So this money, if we go back to July around at the beginning of July, the spokesperson of the Electoral Commission came out to categorically affirm that this Electoral Commission budget was fully funded. That was as of July, fully funded. And so we are 5 months into after the budget has been passed, and about 6 weeks to our election, and then there are claims that the money available to the EC was not sufficient to cover these new expenditures. I think it is absurd, and it indicates poor planning. It indicates how ill-prepared the Electoral Commission is, and it raises questions about the integrity of our institutions, both the EC and the Finance Department. And I think about 2 months before that pronouncement by Mr. Muchunguzi, the EC chairperson himself came out and said that as of 2025, the estimated amount of money that will be required to fully cater for the 2026 general election will be about 800 billion. 800 billion. As opposed to the previous 700 that was spent in the previous election. So how can it be that just a few months away the EC is requesting for a supplementary budget that is more than half of what was projected? I think that is a very huge anomaly, which in some countries would have been inexcusable. How I wish our country was one of those where if such blunders were made, people would be held to account. Now, particularly looking at the contents of this 400 billion, based on what I've gathered, and based on the exegesis by Daily Monitor about how this money will be spent, is that some money is going to be spent on these machines, these biometric verification machines. There's money for demarcation of new polling stations. There's money for publication. And then there's also, I think, a deduplication system.
Yeah.
I think. So one of these things. So I think the question is not as to whether the Electoral Commission needs this money or not. Because at the end of the day, the election needs to be carried out, and the money required for this election to be happen has to be availed. And actually, as of the ministerial statement made during the presentation of the supplementary budget appropriations bill, this money is just being ratified. That means that some of the monies have already been spent, and the reason it was brought back to Parliament is to regularize the spending. But some of this money has been spent. But I think the biggest question comes back to two things as I come to the conclusion. That there are issues around the procedural irregularities around which this money was appropriated. According to the, I think, Public Finance Management Act, there are some restrictions. I think there is a 3% cap for any supplementary budget to be passed. It should not exceed 3%, beyond which it would require scrutiny by the Parliament of Uganda for that bill to be passed. But we see that the $8 trillion shilling supplementary budget has exceeded this 3%, which also now creates an infraction on our laws and regulations that govern our fiscal spending. Then, apart from the procedural irregularities, we also have to look into the aspect of how this funding, how this money is going to be financed. When we look at this money that is being spent, how is it going to be financed? Who is going to bear the brunt of financing this budget, these billions of money that we're injecting, yet they could have been planned and put into the national budget, the budget that was passed early in the mid of this month. So I think at the end of the day, it comes back to the taxpayer, because most of this money to finance the spending of this budget is going to come from external borrowing. And we all know who bears the burden of repaying this money: each and every Ugandan. The more the money is borrowed to finance these supplementaries that are ill-planned, at the end of the day, it is us that face the biggest burden. So I think, by and large, a lot needs to be interrogated, whether it's incompetence on the end of our technocrats in these ministries to have underestimated the budget to the extent that we now have to apply for a supplementary of more than 50% of what was initially projected. And if that has been established, then people need to be brought to account.
Okay. Oprah, from the submissions of Adroni, we get to understand the fact that the money that the supplementary budget that the Electoral Commission is asking is more than 50%, up to a total of 469.5 billion Uganda shillings, more than what they're projected to spend. And the justification for that request for the supplementary budget is to buy more biometric machines, among other justifications that they offer. Is this justification one that should we as Ugandans, as we're looking towards 2026, are we going to have a credible free election? One. But then two, should we even trust the process of the elections? Because if the EC is going ahead and requesting, if the EC that already claimed that the budget that was planned before was enough to take us through the process, and now they're requesting for a supplementary budget, should we be in position to trust the electoral process? Should we be in position to know that there's going to be a credible election process? Or should we as young people be worried that the election could even be marred with a lot of irregularities if the machines are going to be bought today, in a few weeks' time from now, and yet elections are in 15th of January, and yet we're already a few days into the new year? There are arguments that could arise that we need to teach people how to use the machines and all that. So let's just hear your opinions on that particular angle.
Thank you so much, Drake. I think picking up from where Johnny stopped and also trying not to repeat a few things that he said, I think I'll start off from the Public Finance Management Act, which in addition to all those things mentions that for a supplementary budget to be passed, it should be something that is really urgent, something that was unforeseen, and something that is unavoidable. If we're talking biometric machines, these are things that we have been speaking about ever since the 2021 elections, and it's been a constant message. And here we are, just a month or less to the general election, and we have not even allocated money for these biometric machines. I think this is a sign of incompetence towards what government and its planning processes are, but even the Electoral Commission in and of itself. These are things that should have been planned for prior, but we just see them at the neck of the election. And this speaks to a larger problem, but it also speaks to the fact that at this point in time, these are things that are not necessary. These are things that would have been projected ahead of time, but at the point in time that we are in, they're not necessary, because the fear for Ugandans right now is not whether they can verify a voter or not. but rather whether they will be protected at polling stations, whether their votes will be whether their votes will be protected, whether police will not come and beat them and influence them to vote a certain way. Those are the fears of Ugandans. When we even talk about allocating, I think it's about 15,000 new polling stations and things like that, because that's also catered for under the supplementary budget. Ugandans, the voter turnout keeps reducing every single time. So that then begs the question of what is the importance of creating new polling stations? I read, and the chairman, EC, was saying that they want to have a minimum of about 600 voters per polling station all over the country. But if we even look at the polling stations probably that voted in the last election, some of them did not even have half that number because of the level of election violence that happens, the threats that happen along the way. People have just decided to sit back. In fact, the narrative is that the winner of the election is already decided. People will just go probably vote for their MP, and no one even cares about the presidential election anymore, because the notion is that it's already predetermined. Even when there are so many questions in regards to the effectiveness or the workability of these biometric devices and all these things that they're trying to do in regards to teaching people how to use them, if they'll even be effective. Because these are machines, they can be twisted and changed. So where a voter is verified once, they can equally be verified twice, and it's something that will continue. You find that they're working today, and then on day 2 of the election, they are not working, and then you hear halting elections, and then there's so many issues that can rise out of this. And seeing that a traditional system has failed us, I don't know how best we're going to utilize a modern system. Because if traditional voting of checking a list and ticking someone has led to lots of violence, people fighting, even death, I don't know how an online system that people don't understand, especially, I think majority of Ugandans, this is something that is new to them. They will even, the upheaval of violence is even going to be heightened, because this is something that's alien to them. It's something that they've not experienced, it has not been explained, and here we are only a month to elections. So I think it's a miscalculation. It's not urgent. Probably it's something that it's actually something that was foreseeable, and they would have been able to have these teachings, to have awareness campaigns and sensitization to the masses and all these things. But right now we have run out of time, and I think this is just one way of making sure the ruling government has higher chances of probably increasing its percentages, because at this point we all know what the election results will be.
All right, interesting, and that still sums up the overall feeling of young people have about the Electoral Commission, but also the process that is at the moment the way it is. But let me get to you, James. Listening to Adroni and Oprah, it wouldn't do us justice if also you don't give us your opinion on the Electoral Commission supplementary budget and the justification to go ahead and request for such amounts of money. So let us get your thoughts on, one, what you think. Do you think Electoral Commission is justified to request for such figures anyway?
Thank you so much, Drake, and thank you, my brother Rodney and Oprah. To me, I don't want to look at the amount, but I want to look at the rationale. What is the logic? If the logic is okay, I'm okay with the money. Because it is easy when we're sitting in such a room and assume maybe those billions, it's a lot of money. But when you stretch from Kisoro to Arua, and then from Kasese to Malaba, and you're dealing with 45 million Ugandans, it is not actually a lot of money.
Let me just quote you there. Make it make sense. You're requesting for a supplementary budget.
Yes.
2 to 3 weeks to elections.
Yes.
And you want the government to give you this money, or you claim you want to purchase machines. How feasible is it that you'll be in position to access these machines in 3 weeks, have the people who are supposed to use these machines knowledgeable on how to use these machines, irrespective of the coverage that you intend to cover from Kisoro to Arua. But then, in what time frame? How feasible is
On
that?
top of having had 5 years to prepare for
Yes.
the election.
Mr. Dr. For me, I think the word supplementary, it means everything is supplementary. I don't think they are going to start buying machines right now. Maybe if they wanted 100 machines, maybe they have 70 now, they are going to buy extra 30. I am not defending the EC, I'm not from the EC, but I'm just using logic.
It's fine.
Yes.
Those are your opinions.
If they got the money initially, I'm assuming they bought some machines. And maybe with the justification that they are creating new polling stations, so it means every polling station is going to have a new machine. So if they had covered maybe 70%, this extra money maybe it is covered for the remaining 30%.
So why is it now? Why are they coming with that idea now? Yet in July they had a different standpoint.
No. You see, with budget, it is always a proposal. It is upon the parliament to say we are passing the way it is, or maybe we're chopping it. So my reasoning is, the money they may have proposed it, but look at the scale. The youth barrage, the ones that are clicking 18 and they're entering into the voting scope, and these are newcomers into the voting thing. They know nothing. You have to convince them. My sister talked about the old polling stations. The last time they did not even have what is the number, 700 or something. Maybe who knows? Maybe it is because of the radius. How do you look at the kilometers someone has to travel to go to the station? So I think,
but irrespective of the distance that someone has to go even to these polling stations, has the Electoral Commission carried out its mandate in civic education? Besides the adverts you see on certain television channels and radio channels, have they really done enough to go ahead and request for a supplementary budget to buy machines?
Yes. No. You see, when Rodney was starting, he talked about gross mismanagement. That is 100% correct. Now, the other time I saw, one of the methods they want to use for civic education is through print media, newspapers. For example, my grandmother in Chankwan's, print media, she doesn't know about anything. First of all, she doesn't even understand English. So if you want to educate her about the voting rights, you have to go to the ground, the local radio stations, and use those methods. Use these simple means. But if you think you're going to print through New Vision, it is people like James, it is people like Oprah and Sharon who are going to do those things, of which they already know where they're going to vote from and why do they vote. But if you want to target the biggest percentage of our society that has no basic education, then print media, you're wasting money. I think one of the reasons why even their budget is shooting, the methodology of work is wrong. If the methodology is correct, these are the simplest things, because how much do you spend on the radio station, the local radio station, to educate people? Or maybe they can think of anything, but not super.
So in conclusion, would you then therefore justify that Electoral Commission's request for a supplementary budget, in your own opinion and in your own understanding, is it a justifiable act?
You see, Drake, I want you to understand that peace itself is a commodity. And the Electoral Commission, right now, democratically, it could be the commission in charge of the country for those few days.
Yeah.
And if we don't first secure the peace.
But what is peace?
I mean, having the yes.
Let me just hold you there,
yes.
because I can go on and tell you, see, you can have peace and still have injustice.
Yes.
We have peace and we are seeing the brutality going around on people. We have
No,
peace.
that's not peace.
Yes, we know. They claim we have peace. We have peace and we are seeing the injustice happening in the society. You can have peace and still be enslaved. So what is peace?
No, Mr. Dr. Let me finish my point. When you say peace, it becomes abroad and you cannot narrow the scope easily.
Maybe you're looking at peace from the absence.
No, for me, I am saying, if we go back into organizing the whole bureaucracy, it will take us either maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
You understand? Eh? But now, desperate time call for desperate measures. What is most important now is looking at the logic. Do they need money or they don't need it? Do we need new polling stations or we don't need? In the quickest time possible, because election is on 15th.
Yeah.
Now, if we get stuck into how much the methodology is not good and don't pass the budget, we shall have a mixed up process and maybe it could trigger something. Yeah. That is the piece I'm talking about. Maybe, okay, let me say minimum peace. Not total peace, you get it? So my whole idea, yes.
It's all right.
My whole idea is, let us look at the logic. Let us not be scared by the numbers. Because even these returning officers and everyone, if you want them not to be compromised, you must increase their pay. Otherwise, they're going to be compromised, and all those things that we're trying to avoid.
So in
they're going to
conclusion,
happen.
you agree with the idea?
I
of
agree
supplementary?
that these people get the money and organize, and we finish the process. Thank you so
All right,
much.
Thank you.
Mm.
Sharon, let's also get your opinion. Is it justified to request for this supplementary budget?
Thank you so much, Joe. Okay, in my own opinion, I think this is like a last-minute decision that comes through, and that causes like it all comes with things like it portrays Uganda and the whole government as a poor planning country, because as the others have said, these people had a full 5 years to organize and look at. Because I think the best way this would have happened would have they look at what happened in the previous elections. I think that is now where then the supplementary budget has to come in before at hand to understand that okay, the last time we voted, the polling stations were less, the biometric things or verification and all those things are less. But still, I don't see the instance of them coming out on the last minute, because at the end of the day we are looking at, are we going to have a fair and free election? And the only way to have those things is one. I understand that I understand this, as he said, they may need this money, but is it well explained? Like, do they really need this sort of money at this last minute? Because it's just few days, few weeks to have this sort of elections. Fine, it is not practical at all. One, understand the country we live in. Even if you argue that the youth are like the growing number and all that, not all of us are going to go vote on that day. Most of us don't have incentive for voting, as Oprah said. I might go and vote my own MP, but I'm not going to vote the president and all those things. This is because it's not like I'm not informed and all those things, but it is because of the sort of system that we are living in. But also, then if they had like my issue with them, I'm not supporting their budget and all those things. My issue here is, why then do they think that they have to come out on this last minute to come and ask for this money? Because meaning that you're going to increase the sort of debt burden of this specific sort of countries, but then you're going to compromise on other sectors that need this sort of money. That is to say, as he said, they're going to compromise on things like safety, they're going to compromise on things like security. The only way to have free and fair elections is not about increasing this money. Am I able to go to a polling station even if the line is long? Am I able to vote without being threatened, without being bribed? Even if you say so, I'm just disappointed that you have to say that the only way for these people to have this sort of peace or maybe security and all those things, you have to like increase a specific sort of pay. This is the reason as to why Uganda we are going backward, because you're introducing money to every kind of individual. Meaning that if I'm supposed to protect Drake on a polling station, he's supposed to first pay me. That is why these people have the mandate of the power to come and start asking for like money to come through for this sort of things. But also look at the learning rate of which Ugandans are, because most of the people who apply to do these sort of things are not going to be like, it's on short notice. Someone is going to, as Oprah said, someone is going to come and say, okay, I can use this sort of biometric devices and all those things. But they're just earning a life. It's just a hustle. Whether they know or they do not know, how sure are we these people are not going to be compromised? But also, how sure are we that there's not going to be a mismanagement of this sort of funds? Same thing. If I'm in home and I'm going to start maybe school, at any one point I ask for my parents, I'm meant to pay, let's say, 1.5 M for tuition. The last minute I tell them I'm paying 20 M. It's a last minute. There are a lot of questions that arise from that. Only if these people can come out and tell us that like the sort of metric or this kind of system, how it is going to work, and how then does then it increase the sort of trust process that we as the youth, for example, as the youth, most of us do not trust in this sort of system. What happens is if you increase this sort of money, okay, fine, let's talk about the polling stations that you want to increase them and all those things.
Because of course the justification is you have currently registered voters of around 21.6 million Ugandans.
Yeah, okay, simple terms. Yeah. Let's look at the primaries we had. How many youths voted? How many people traveled to go and vote? Increase them or not increase them, if we are not having an incentive to go and vote, it then becomes...
So should therefore the conversation shift from increasing polling stations to, first of all, Electoral Commission executing its mandate of having a sect of Ugandans knowing why exactly they should participate in the process?
Yes, that's why I'm in support with what Oprah said, because at the end of the day, whether I increase them or you don't increase them, if I don't have an incentive, even if you say print media, that sort of sensitization, even if it is is not there. Because nowadays how people are doing this is because give me this, I give you that.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. So I feel like this whole budget comes in on a short notice. Could it have been a problem if they had budgeted at hand, but also what has happened to the from a budget that they had.
In short, it's a red flag. Yeah. Adroni, our electoral process, but also our history as a country has been, of course, marred with a lot of violence, with a lot of unpeaceful ways of transition of governments. And for the past 40 years, we have seen seemingly peaceful elections, peaceful in quotes. And we have seen transition of members of parliament, but we have not seen a transition of a president. And the idea of election for most people, when they hear elections, they only think of, okay, we shall change, we can change MPs, but we cannot change the president. So that particular mindset has made very many Ugandans, particularly people who have been born under the NRM government, refrain from the process of engaging in the electoral process. But also alive to the fact that Electoral Commission is a body that is directly appointed by the office of the president, raises red flags. Ugandans are asking the question, is it really credible for us to go ahead and participate in a process whereby we know these are individuals who are appointed by the person that so-called holds these positions that we are going to vote for? Will the process be free? Will the process be fair? Will the process be credible? Which brings me to the question of the democratic process or journey that we want as a country, and something that Electoral Commission has to offer us as a nation. If at this point in time the EC is requesting for a supplementary budget to buy biometric machines, yet there are questions relating to lack of civic awareness among the citizenry. In the 2021 elections, we saw a low voter turnout, yet we had 18 million voters that were registered. Right now we have 21.6. We are not certain whereby even all the 21.6 will participate in the process. So we need now to shift the question and understand, is Electoral Commission's is the EC's agenda directed towards the process of, is it directed towards the process, or are they actually thinking about the people who directly participate in the process? Because from where I sit, they're entirely interested in getting machines that justify that they're doing work and not looking at the end result, the people who entirely put these people in power that will benefit from the process or from their actions that they want to justify that they're actually doing some work.
So, just before I get to that briefly, there are some key issues that were raised by my sister Oprah and my brother, which I felt needed some little bit of more deliberation. So I think the key ingredient here in supplementary funding is unforeseeable, just like Oprah raised the issue. Unforeseeable, unavoidable, and in some cases unabsorbable. So most of the issues, with all due respect to your opinion on this matter, most of the issues you seem to raise to anyone with to any person out there seem to appear to be foreseeable. For example, you talk about the distance, maybe. So you can't tell us that the Electoral Commission, throughout all the past 3 years, has not been able to look into the issue of how fast people will be able to move. So that makes such reasons really foreseeable and do not justify such funding, or even the youth bulge, because I doubt we've had some young people being produced within the last 3 years who reached the voting age and now need to be catered for. I think somewhere when I was reading in the comment sections, there's a certain lady who was asking that have some of our neighboring countries borrowed us some land such that we increase the number of polling stations to cater for the increasing number of people within these areas. So I think most of the ingredients were not really met, especially in terms of them being unavoidable and unforeseeable. And I also think that this could also be as a result of wrong data, figures that were erroneously used for the planning process. maybe it could be that the figures used were old figures, and that we are in this whole mess because of the imprudence of EC and using of inaccurate figures or outdated figures that really do not meet our current realities. But at the end of the day, the implication is on the Ugandans. And then lastly is about the biometrics, which Oprah really expresses a lot of disapproval. I think, in my personal opinion, there is some merit and legitimacy to these systems. And under better circumstances, I think there are development that we should welcome, and it's only the manner in which the execution has been undertaken which has a problem. Because at the end of the day, to protect the integrity of the vote, these biometrics are very, very crucial. The EC came out to actually give us how these systems will work, how they are meant to prevent people from voting more than once. And based on my recollection of that presentation, I think it is a very good system. And I'm hopefully that now, after the 2026 general election, which many say is behind us, in terms, of course, of the result and who has won, as we move towards the next general election, I think we need to put a lot of focus in ensuring that we incorporate these systems such that we build on, we make it, the system more better and more efficient. Now, to jump to the question of the Electoral Commission and where its focus has been, whether its focus has been on the process or on the people. I think the most important thing right now here that we must deal with is that, like you say in your preamble, the Electoral Commission has really not done enough in as far as executing its legitimate role to make sure that this process is as smooth as it should be. There are very many questions as to how people's rights are still being grossly violated. There are very many questions of how very many people do not exactly know where they're going to vote from. Some people, there has always been budgeting for voter education. However, as of today, you can really read the general mood in our atmosphere that very many people don't even exactly know what is currently happening. And so I think for the Electoral Commission to come out and say, we need money to procure this, the Electoral Commission came out with a very beautiful roadmap, very well curated roadmap. It has put into place these frameworks. But my fear is that the focus has been more on these frameworks rather than the people who are actually more important, who bring life to these systems. So our focus, or the focus of the EC, should have shifted to actually the people who are going to vote. It should have shifted to making the process seamless, to make the process less intimidating, and to ensure that more and more people vote. Because relative to our total population, or the number of people that are registered every year to participate in voting, which is currently standing at 21 million, there has been voter apathy, and we have seen less and less people voting compared to our actual numbers. So I think the focus, our preoccupation right now, the preoccupation of the EC, should shift from these trivialities to actually address real concerns about making the process safe for people to vote and making the election credible, such that people regain hope in the process. Because as of now, people have lost trust in the process, and like many assertions from the current speakers, people no longer seem to have hope in voting beyond LC and MP. Yet the presidential election, which many should really be enthused by, the most consequential election is one that is in question.
Okay. Oprah, just as before we go into the break, I just also want to quickly get your thoughts on Electoral Commission's intent. In your first submissions, you make mention that there is a huge ambience around the voters who are going to partake in the process, but also generally Ugandans who are not aware of why exactly they should vote, or even those who are registered voters are still swayed by items that are not actually not they won't vote on issues, but they'll vote on tokens that they have been given as individuals. So Electoral Commission coming out to request for this money to facilitate the process, and not even ashamed to, let me use the word ashamed, to even see that there is a huge gap when it comes to civic awareness among the citizens of this country. It begets me to ask you that how does then EC just go ahead and justify this budget amidst the high gaps of voter illiteracy?
Thank you so much, Drake, for that question. I think starting off from this entire election cycle, I believe that the moment one general election ends, it's the start of preparation for another new cycle, another 5 years, because 5 years really move so quickly. So immediately you have to start the preparation period. And to see things that are at the core of preparation, really, that is the people. The people are the ones at the core. So where you wait a month to elections, and that's when you believe that, okay, now voters and their votes should now be protected with machines that prevent duplication and with biometrics, I think that becomes less of the point. Because from the moment elections end, we are now supposed to be telling voters why they should vote, and that stems right from the characters of their leaders, right from how you have seen your MP or your president present themselves throughout the reign, or the other candidates, how have they been pushing themselves throughout that whole period leading up to elections. That speaks to the heart of any voter to vote for any one of the candidates. But when you sit on your television and you watch that road accidents keep happening, people are lacking medicine in hospitals, things like that, and that speaks to government is doing nothing. Even when probably they're doing one or two things here and there, the general message is that there is still such a huge lack, even when they've been in power for so long. And then when you look at the people that you would want to vote, who may be the opposition in this case, you then look at how their human rights are constantly being violated. That where anyone professes to support a particular party or a particular person, they are beaten, they are abducted, they are kidnapped. All this then goes into fear. This puts people into fear. And yet the essence of elections is for them to be free and fair. So this looks like people having the freedom to choose who to vote, to choose to profess who they stand with. But if we are living at a time where when you decide to stand for a certain candidate, you're going to be beaten or you're going to be harshly abused, then it removes the freedom from the election. And then when we talk about how fair it is, and then because so many things point out to an election being fair, it goes back to how has the system of voting been programmed or been organized. And here you are 1 month to elections, they are installing or planning to buy or have bought biometric devices. How sure are we that all the voter data is in these has been put into these devices in such a short period of time, because we saw instances where even when the manual voter register came out, people's names were missing, and people had to go and complain to the EC that, oh, I registered, but my name is missing, and this is just on a piece of paper. So what do the remedies look like if I put both my thumbprints in and my data is not in the machine, and but it's on the physical one, or I have a card? What is the remedy for that? So it looks like this has been something that has not been seen through. EC has not given us any commitment. They've not given us any plan. They've not showed us how this is going to even work. So it then really brings a lot of questions into the mind of a voter. So when we are talking free, fair elections, I don't think that in this narrative that we are working with, it's not something that we can even dream of. I think we will just have elections, but the essence that they will be free and fair is really out of the picture.
It's just ticking the box on the end. Allow us just go for a short break before I come back to James and Sharon, so that we can shift gears and also understand what's the essence also of having all these polling stations amidst, them requesting for a budget, which will help us get to the point of understanding, is our democracy progressing or is it regressing? Something that I think we should talk about. Otherwise, this is the inter-university debates. We're just going for a short break. See you in a bit.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Hello there, dear esteemed viewers. Welcome back to, of course, the inter-university debates. Just before we went into the break, the conversation was around Electoral Commission's supplementary budget, but also the need to go ahead and increase more polling stations. Allow me to get back to you, James. Before we even shift gears and have a justification as to why, of course, we need these more polling stations according to EC. Yes, at the moment we have registered voters of up to 21.6 million Ugandans. But still, the conversation that Oprah and Rodney have greatly and extensively talked about in regards to voter preparedness is something that is lacking. Amidst Electoral Commission's justification to have a process that is flawless and a process that is seamless with machines that would help improve the voting process. But that argument doesn't stand amidst the high rates of voter illiteracy that Rodney and Oprah have greatly elaborated. So my question to you, therefore, will still be in regards to your earlier on submission that greatly justified EC's stand to go ahead and request this, request for a supplementary budget. Is that justification still the same? And if so, how does then this reflect on the citizenry that are going to participate in the process?
Thank you so much, Mr. Drake. Starting from what my brother Rodney and my sister Oprah, you see, one of the areas where this government has failed totally is PRO. Their public relations is poor. Not only to do with EC, but also other government structures. Look at the Ministry of Health when they are announcing things like Ebola. The kind of pictures or print media they put up, they are irritating. You ask yourself, are these people Ugandans? Do they know how Ugandans think or what? You understand? They will put up a picture that has like 200 words and they're explaining Ebola. Where are they putting it? in book or something. These people don't want to read. They did not go to school. You understand? So they are using the system of one shoe fits all, which is totally wrong. If maybe you are addressing people of Kampala or something, you can try that.
But even in Kampala, not everyone
People don't want to read. They don't want a lot of words. So I think it is the same thing that EC is doing now. If you look at all their print media, they are putting in a lot of time, a lot of wording that Ugandans don't understand. And when I look at it and it is irritating, it doesn't resonate with my energy, I turn off my head and go.
From that analogy, your earlier submission, would you still opine to your submission that EC's supplementary budget is justified from that angle of your submission?
Yes, for me, like the whole budget, the parliament could choose to chop. But the justification, it is there. If they need supplementation, they should get it. Now, the whole system of saying that they are wrong, they are not doing well, the methodology, I told you that could take like more 5 years to rectify. And if you are looking at a very, very sensitive period that is going to happen in the next 1 month, you cannot correct all those errors. So I am saying, we have always killed eyes, let us kill another eye and give them money and finish the job. Because you're not going to correct the system today. He started with a very good opening remark saying that there is gross mismanagement. And if you have been close to all these structures, there is gross mismanagement. You understand? Eh?
Yeah.
When I talked about giving the returning officers more money...
So should we therefore allow them to grossly mismanage everything?
Not grossly, but not grossly.
That's exactly
yes,
that's
I'm telling you. But what is the general logic? What is the general logic? The general logic is that election period is very sensitive. This is.
So because of its sensitivity, we should let them get all the money they want.
No, not all the money they want. That's why I'm saying Parliament should chop, but should not stop the supplementation. Let them supplement their budget. And the idea of increasing the polling stations, I 100% agree. Because for me, I come from Changwanzi, from the savannah. People will walk, I don't know how many kilometers to reach the polling station. Some people don't vote because of the distance. Other people are disabled. Look at the cost of, if I'm disabled, it means I'm going to go with someone who will help me out. Going with someone who will help me out, it means I'm going to pay for extra money to transport them. Yeah. Why am I doing all that? I'm going to cost only 1 vote. You understand? So if you don't reduce the radius through which people move to go and vote, that is one of the factors that will stop them from coming. Yeah. So for me, I'm saying the whole logic is okay. The mismanagement, you cannot show it today. Trust me. Because the mismanagement is not only in the EC, the mismanagement is everywhere. So, you see there's something called palliative care. For me, I'm a medic. If they tell you have cancer, you don't say as a medic, you don't say now you have cancer, there's nothing you can do. You have to do something up to the last what? The last minute until maybe there is cure or you go to heaven.
So what is EC doing?
So for me, I'm saying, if there's gross mismanagement, we shouldn't fold our hands and say, because there's mismanagement, we don't give them. So I'm saying, let us try to contain the situation when it is possible. Much as there's misuse of money, bad methodology, that is a problem we can address after, when we evaluate the whole system, the whole process, how it went. But if you want to cut off at this stage, you're going to cause in the process of solving a problem, you're going to create a bigger problem. Because she talked about primaries when we were starting. All people that lost in primaries and they were not contented, they have come back as independents. Why are they coming back as independents? It is because they have some trust in the EC. They don't have trust in the parties, but they have some trust in the what? And this is an individual, but who has like thousands of people behind them. So there is some anger that is still buried. Now, when EC is not fully facilitated, and maybe errors happen, you don't know what will explode and what will happen. So, I am saying, let us facilitate EC, let the process go on, and let it be done. We shall evaluate, see the mismanagement, and maybe handle it in 2031. Thank you very much.
Interesting submission. Sharon, do you agree with the submissions of James in regards to the justification to more polling stations?
I don't agree with it. It is like saying, I'm going to campus and I've mismanaged tuition. And my parent is like, okay, let me pay. We shall handle the issue of you misusing the tuition next semester.
Again,
It
you
do-
mismanage.
Yeah. So meaning you're giving these guys relevance, you're giving them opportunity to do, because they know at the end of the day, yeah, I know it is a crucial step, but let us not make rash decisions, because either way this is not something, this sort of change they want to do, increase polling stations, is not something that is going to solve Uganda's democratic problems of things like manipulation and all those things. At the end of the day, I still emphasize on it, that at the end of the day, even if you increase this sort of polling stations, how sure there is not going to be this sort of manipulation? It already exists even when we have these small ones. What then happens when we already have, because when you look through our democratic system, we have a lot of things like confusion. You're just going to confuse these sort of individuals with you trying to increase this sort of what? Increase this sort of polling stations. For example, I come from Potpoto. So it means that if I'm in a specific village, you're going to increase polling stations, like you're going to increase something like 3 to 4 polling stations. Yes, you're trying to reduce things like long lines and crowding and all those things. Me, I have no problem if we all make lines that day and there is overcrowding, but to have a free and fair election where I trust the system. At a point in time when there is no trust, or there is that sort of manipulation with this sort of thing. As Oprah said, there is a lot of manipulation that come, because it's not only going to come within this sort of polling stations, it's then going to come within the sort of systems that they're trying to bring, because they had an entire 5 years to accommodate the sort of biometric devices and other things of voter registration and all those things. One thing you need to understand, that this is not a change that is going to solve the problems that you're having as a country. Because when you look at the kind of problems you have in Uganda, you look at the risk of manipulating this sort of individuals. Many people currently, when you look at our population, yes, it is increasing. We are vulnerable or gullible to things like manipulation at the end of the day. Because one, when you look at the youth, what do they want? We are seeing we are losing so many youth in terms of elections because they feel it is a game of it's called hustle. This is how the gig economy. We are losing many people into the gig economy because they feel at that specific point that is the right choice they need to make. That is why even so when you say that you still let them mismanage the funds, let them give them that money, they are still going to, you see, people will never get satisfied with their specific sort of things, because if then you close an eye or whatever you called it and say, okay, let's give them this money, what then happens to the next people that are going to come? One, the thing you're trying to portray to maybe the Ugandans or the people watching us, or maybe people who are meant to do what? To participate in these sort of elections are going to be, because this is, as I said, this is something that is short notice. What happens then? You're increasing this sort of problems that you're having as a country. You're bringing a lot of sort of mistrust within this sort of, because people are going to have issues with this sort of system. Why are you increasing? We are already confused as Ugandans. Like, even when you see us moving, you see a lot of confusion. But even when you say, you see that sort of, because I think the best way these people are meant to do their job, it's not about asking for money. Me, I had no problem if they ask for money and be like, okay, we are going to do a lot of sensitization, increase the numbers of people coming. Because when you look at primaries, really, how many people left their comfort zones to go and vote? Very few individuals. They claim the youth were many, but what incentive or what sort of metric have they put for us to travel, to live? Because, for example, right now, if I'm traveling to Fort, it is 95,000. What makes, because even if I'm in holiday, I can't risk myself to go and vote for something that is not going to help me at the end of the day. But also that sort of manipulation that is going to come, I'm going to go vote, they're going to beat me, they're going to threaten me, very many things are going to come on board. Regardless whether the contestants have increased, whether these guys have increased, I think the best way the EC has to work within its sort of system, handle their sort of loopholes that they have within themselves, because I think the money that was allocated to them before, that sort of budget, is something that, because if they really thought that it is not going to be enough, because is it on the last minute that you say that, oh, it's like you're going to class and you're already in the next and you're like, oh, I don't have account anymore.
All right.
Like,
just as you wind up, one more question. Do you think Uganda's democracy in the past years, has it regressed or has it progressed?
That's a tricky one.
Just give us a quick assessment.
To me, I think it has regressed.
Why?
One, because when you look at the numbers that each time we vote, numbers decrease. Numbers of people who are going to vote decrease. Numbers of people who are voting basically are decreasing every time. And then you're looking at the kind, because when you looked at the previous elections, when you had violence, we thought maybe this time around it would be, but still people are still being beaten, people are still being refused from campaigning from certain districts and all those things. So me, I think it is not progressing all that, it is just
regressing.
Yeah.
My brother James,
Yes, please.
same question. Has, in your opinion, is our democracy on a progressive trajectory, or is it on a regressive downhill?
No, I think it is progressing.
Sure.
It is for sure. Let me give some brief. Where should I start from? Maybe from 1900, when the colonists came here. They were here for 70-something years. We did not have any election. You understand?
But so from that example alone, the concept of democracy just shows it's foreign.
No. First wait, I'm talking about Uganda. You see, for me, I'm a Ugandan, and I never lie to myself. So from that time, 61, I think there were some elections. Then we went into turmoil until 86. Elections 81, 80s, they were not good. Now, the real election, I think, started in 96. And the whole concept of election is, or democracy, is that Drake will stand and you convince me, and Sharon will also convince me why I should vote them. And I think as we have advanced for the past 30 years, there is progress. Honestly, there's progress. Because if me being here at Civic Space, past 5 years it wasn't there. And I think this is part of the expressing of my opinions. They must not be uniform, but I think generally people know why they should vote, know why they vote, and that's why they keep coming, they keep voting. Maybe, I know the general thinking is that for a democracy to be democracy is changing a president every 5 years or something. But I want to tell you, in 24 years, from 1962 to 86, so I think we had like 7 presidents in 24 years. And I don't think maybe that time it's when Uganda was more democratic. So for me to say that there is some progress, I am not exaggerating. There is progress. Yes, there is a lot to be done, but there is progress. Yes.
Oprah, progress or we are regressing?
I think I will start with the years I've been alive. And within those years, I could say that we are regressing. I think firstly, what is democracy? Simply put, democracy is when people are the rulers, when people have the ability to have a say in regards to their government, in regards to their social services, in regards to matters that affect them. And where power is with the people, then we can say that there is a democracy. But where power is in the hands of another person or a set of people, and now people are being excluded, that looks like policies no longer favor the people. Decisions that are taken, for example, this supplementary budget, affect people of all levels, whether they are rich or poor or at the grassroots. Then we can say that democracy is long gone. Because if we are even to do a survey of just 100 people anywhere in Uganda, we can see that we have moved. I don't even think there is a point we have been at a democracy. Maybe at the point where the Museveni government came into power. But I think where we are now, we are in more or less a dictatorship, because rule of law is not working anymore. When we look at Electoral Commission, they simply want to please their boss. Their boss must win. And that is all that they're doing. Every single thing that they do is to lead up to that. Increasing polling station means reducing numbers, so it means reducing people who can have the ability to protect their vote or to stay behind for a period of time to make sure that their vote is counted very well, put some amount of pressure so that the vote is not stolen or things like that. But then also seeing that democracy is long gone is where you have a parliament, and this parliament has been elected by people, but when the parliamentarians reach there, they can't even debate about matters that affect them. Look at this supplementary budget. I think it was just a few people from opposition that were able to raise their voices against it. Other than that, everybody else was quiet. Everybody else has been silenced by a higher power. Either most of them have even been silenced by a few pennies here and there. So I think the issue of democracy is something that we can't have in this context. Uganda is past a democracy. We just have signs of a democracy, but when you deeply look at the system, we are really in a dictatorship. You can't say that that Uganda is being ruled by its people. There is really another force at hand.
Thank you. Rodney, are we on a progressive tail or on a regressive hill?
So, looking at it from a much more broader perspective, I would vehemently agree with my brother that Uganda is largely on an upward trend when it comes to our democratic progression. Because many times when we analyze the state of democracy in our country, and more so juxtapose it with those of the more romanticized democracies in the world, we forget what they had to go through to reach where they were.
Yes.
Countries like South Korea, even the US itself, because the US is now the most quintessential model of democracy. But we ignore the fact that they had to go through holocausts. Hundreds of thousands of people had to die before the freedoms they enjoy today. So, relative to a country that is just 60 years old, compared to countries whose democracies are more than 300 years old,
Yes.
I think we are largely on a progressive trend. And also to deeply delve into also the question of what democracy is. Democracy has been defined with many meanings, and the most common one out there is that the will of majority must prevail. But we must also not forget that democracy also looks at upholding the rights, the fundamental rights of minority groups. And if you look at the case of Uganda, I think there have been really a positive trend in terms of minority groups, in terms of representation. If you look at women groups, women have been greatly represented through affirmative action policies. Young people have more structures. The question of whether they are working or not is a whole other debate. But I think by and large, in terms of the question of the minority, which are a very crucial tenet of democracy, there have been progress. But lastly, I also think that for a country to continue progressing in terms of democracy is that, and especially for a younger democracy like Uganda, we must be willing to deny ourselves some of the trimmings of democracies that can only be enjoyed by the more developed democracy. You see, I am also among the people that are opposed to the idea of over-liberalization, where everyone should do whatever they want. I think that is a wrong mindset, and we must be willing to deprive ourselves of some of those privileges that can only be enjoyed by the more developed economies as we continuously work towards making ours bigger and better. Things such as very huge governments, I mean very huge parliaments, where we have the parliament which is the size of countries like India, yet relative to our GDP, we cannot sufficiently finance them. The huge emoluments, the salaries to our public officials, all those things we must deprive ourselves. But I think in the larger frame of things, there has been an improvement and we are progressing, and I think we shall reach the promised land. Maybe not in our lifetime, but years to come, we shall.
Okay.
So maybe to add on his point a little, he talked about how US has been in democracy for 400 years. But to remind you is that women in US and blacks started voting in 1960s, just recently, when my father was alive. So for 300 years, women were not voting and blacks. But for us who we are saying 30 years in democracy, But every district has a women representative in parliament. And Drake, I have been to, I think, more than 5 countries. And I can tell you confidently that Uganda is among the most democratic countries living on the planet.
If I may ask.
Yes, I'm telling you, confidently.
Just allow me to ask. What are those countries you've been to?
Some are our neighboring countries. I wouldn't want to read
for context.
No, for example.
For context.
No, some continuity. No, I will not mention the countries. but Drake. Yeah. You walk around. you come back and tell me. But Uganda is a very nice place to be. I know
it is. That I don't dispute.
For example, you can see the committee here. So some committees are not even balanced, and that comes from the mindset. But for us here, we now know, and that's part of democracy. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you, Sharon. Way forward as we end this conversation. What recommendations do you have for EC towards 2026? What needs to be done? What can they do differently 2026?
Thank you so much. I think the way forward for EC, as I was saying throughout my whole submission, is I think they need to start doing proper planning. You don't just come and throw a whole bomb onto government or into like a country just because you feel you want to make a specific change. You want that change to, because last minute changes are never felt, or the impact, even if they have that sort of impact, it is never going to be felt at a larger population. I think the best way to do it is plan ahead. Immediately after this election, let them identify the loopholes, identify their strength, what has happened, what has done, whatever has happened within this sort of elections. They see what they need within the next the other 5 years of this sort of elections. But lastly, I think they need to give us incentive. They need to do voter sensitization deep down, like for people to always have that sort of mandate to be like, okay, we'll be looking up forward to. There are few people who look forward to voting, but if they have that sort of sensitization to create that sort of whole transparency within the whole entire system, I think that's the best way they can have that sort of high voter turnout. Also, the trainings could be done early if they want us to start using biometrics and having that sort of information. I think they should start having proper accessibility to accurate information for us, so that when I'm going to vote, I don't have to first then stand, then approve me and all those things, and then I'm not there, those things. So I think they need to do these things way before for a bigger impact to be felt. Yeah.
Thank you. James, recommendations and concluding remarks.
For me, my recommendation to EC is to think local. It is good to benchmark from other countries, but it's good to think local. What do Ugandans want? You have benchmarked from maybe Singapore or those democratic areas, but what is the mind of your people? Are you speaking to them, or you're speaking from where you benchmarked? If we think local and address the local problems, Ugandans will understand us. Okay. And maybe another emphasis is because of the nature of our demography, the biggest voters are the youth. And you know, as youth, our survival instincts are low. And most politicians ride on that. Because you see a border man, he ride his border and raise up his hands. And he doesn't know that the death is just close. He cannot even think about that. Because as a young person, my survival instincts are low. So the EC should focus so much at demobilizing election violence, more especially to do with youth. Yeah,
thank you. Oprah, recommendations and concluding remarks.
I think I'll probably sound more like the rest of the panelists, but I think the EC needs to do more planning. It needs to center towards the people and think what's best for the people. I know technology is really good and we should embrace it, but on top of that, we should look more at making elections free and fair. So that looks like reducing election violence, reducing the monetization that's in politics, and just giving people the freedom to choose their leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Rodney, recommendations and concluding remarks.
Right, thank you so very much. I will not really differ so much from what has already been said. I think that first and foremost, our duty bearers need to stop running our country like a kiosk. We cannot be a country that is being run on supplementary budgets. And it has become habitual for our parliament to always run our country based on supplementaries. How I wish there is that 1 year where we miraculously do not have a supplementary budget to actually show that we have really improved in terms of our planning. So I think the other issue is that these officials must be brought to account, because at the end of the day, this money is taxpayers' money. If this money was gotten somewhere and we were not the ones to pay for it, maybe they would have the latitude to use it the way they want. But the mere fact that ultimately payments are coming from from us, the taxpayers, then every coin should be accounted for. And those that mismanage the planning process should either resign or be fired, and at the end of the day, they should be prosecuted. So, lastly, I think EC should shift gears to address more fundamental questions. Questions about making the process free, fair, and credible, and making the process safe. We've been seeing a lot of diabolical behavior from our security forces. We've seen people being battered. We've seen people being shot dead. I think these are issues that must be addressed, because I don't think an election is big enough to the extent that people should lose their lives. So it should be the preoccupation of the EC to ensure that the process is safe, free, and fair. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rodney, Oprah, James, and Sharon, for the wonderful submissions you've made tonight. It's been very interesting listening to you, but also learning from you as well. And thank you always for honoring our invitation to join us on Civic Space TV. To you, our dear esteemed viewers, for religiously following all the conversations that happen on Civic Space TV, but particularly the inter-university debates, thank you very much for doing so. But also to the production crew, Paul and Brittany, for ensuring that this show airs right on time. Thank you very much. And to the Center for Constitutional Governance for giving young people a platform to air out their voice and views on matters of national importance. Thank you very much. And last but not least, allow me to wish you a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Bye-bye.